It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we begin a Wednesday. August break Wednesday. Just trying to find something. Gary, how are you?
Doing good. What I liked yesterday was a poll that was out to the tip poll that was talking about bribery and asked the question that, you know, if you knew that the president committed bribery, should he go? All right. So the premise of the question is, and this isn't even a political question, this is a moral question.
Yeah.
If you knew that the president committed bribery, should he go? 20% of Americans say no. Who are those 20% of Americans?
Well,
I mean, I don't care. I don't care if it was a Republican president or a Democratic president. If the evidence exists, because that's the premise of the question. You know, it's not whether you think Biden did it. The question is, if this president took the bribe, should he go? And 20% of Americans, no, he should stay and run again.
Well, that wasn't accurately reported. That 20% said no, but they could be persuaded. While holding their hand out and rubbing their fingers together. I'm sorry, did you say this is a poll about bribery?
Well, I could be persuaded.
I could be persuaded.
Grease the palm a little bit, could you please? Those are the kind of polls that, and we've always done this when we look at any poll. It doesn't matter what it is, and when you get to the absurd part of it, you say, you know, even if it's 5% on some absurd question, you're like, who are these 5% of Americans? Okay. You know, if the president went out and murdered, if the president was involved in a genocide, should he be removed from office? No. And you'll always get 3% of Americans say no.
No, I know. Yeah.
Who are these people?
Right. Well, I was going to say, because you have to go back to that 20% and then go, okay, let's revisit this. Listen, we're going to ask you again. First of all, do you know the definition of bribery?
No, we've often talked about that.
You got to qualify them.
Right. We would qualify all polls because when the majority of Americans don't understand the three branches of government,
right,
then any type of Supreme Court decision, when you ask the American public, for example, do you agree with the Supreme Court and what they did? And people say, no, they should have done this. You go, well, you have to understand, do you understand the Supreme Court's role? First off, do you know the three branches of government and why they exist? And the majority of Americans would tell you no, which means the majority of Americans have no idea why our government is set up the way that it is and what the Constitution is all about. They're completely clueless,
right?
Yet they drive public opinion based on their ignorance.
Because I'll take your absurd thought a little bit more absurder.
Okay,
and the whole genocide thing, 3% come back. I agree with you. Actually, I think it would be higher. I think we might be close to double digits on that one. And then you go back and say, well, do you know what genocide is? And they would say, well, yes. And if he wants to kill bugs around his house, he could do that. And then you go, okay, all right. At that point, see, that's the thing. I would be done at that point. I would just be, if I'm a pollster, I would have to quit. I would quit after the first day. What do you mean 20% said no?
Who are these people?
I want their names. I want to go to their homes and just ask them nicely, do you know what bribery means? Define the word bribery. It's like, seriously. Or are we at the point now, like we talked about, You get a D.C. jury. Who was it that wrote? Was it somebody at National Review that wrote about a D.C. jury thing in the last, just basically throwing up that idea that, if you get a D.C. jury, they might either convict or, depending, or let someone go. We talk about the Sussman trial, and lying to the FBI was the charge. Yeah, we think he lied to the FBI, but one juror said, but there are more serious crimes. There are bigger problems.
There are bigger problems to look at that I really don't care about sitting on this jury. I don't care about the specific crime that was committed because I believe there are bigger problems.
Right.
And my job is basically jury nullification.
Yeah.
Not to look at this and look at the law, because that's what the juror said. That we're just relating what the juror said.
Right.
We're not saying it. It's what we're simply reporting. And so you say, okay, what does that mean when a juror says that? And to me, it means jury nullification. I like this. I don't like the other candidate. Therefore, this particular person that I side with on politics, if they decide to break the law, that's okay with me.
Well, bribery, 20%. Nah. Think about that. Listen, one man's bribery is just another man's exchange of money for a huge political favor. It's
which is bribery.
Which is the definition of bribery. They're all corrupt. Let them make their money while they can. No, I could. You know what else I could see? I thought about this the other day. Remember, it was. I think it was in the summer of 2008. I think they did the profile on Joe Biden, who was then after the convention of 2008. I'm pretty sure it was right after the convention, and he was, he was Obama's Veep ticket, Veep choice on the ticket. And they did this thing, liberal media, Joe Biden took the train to work and took the train home. He's not a rich elitist like other members of Congress. This long-serving senator is one of the poorest members of Congress, blah, blah, blah. And I can see people going, you know what? It's time he made his money. That 20%. He made his money. So what? I mean, seriously. That's just, that's where we are today. That's my confidence in people, because if we can look at all the problems, we hit on it yesterday, we can look at all the problems that right here are on our plate by choice, that we voted to happen, and that are still in play and are going to keep repeating until we vote differently as a nation, then it doesn't surprise me that 20% go, bribery, so what?
When you maybe think of the story out there, and I'll get it, I didn't have it lined up to talk about now, but the story out there about that woman in Portland who got mugged.
Yeah.
And she said, our fault. We voted for this.
Yeah.
That's what we voted for.
Wow. Yeah.
This is what the city of Portland wanted. This is what the people of Portland wanted. And, because you look at it, and there's no other way to look at it. I don't know how you can look at it and say, for example, when you talk about let's cut, police funding.
Yeah.
And when you say let the criminal roam free.
Yeah.
Are people really that? I have to ask this question: are they really that stupid to believe that if you let criminals roam free and you cut police on the street, that crime will get better?
And that it won't affect you?
Yeah. I mean, are people really that stupid? Because we're not even, we're talking about the most Neanderthal basic critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no sophistication in that, in getting to that mindset that if we cut police and we let the criminals stay on the street, it's like what do they say that what was it? A third of the shoplifting, was it in New York or San Francisco? I think it was in New York. It was by 300 people.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it's a small group, right?
300 people doing the same thing over and over again.
Right.
You put those.
It's organized,
right? You put those 300 people in jail and punish them for a significant period of time for doing it over and over, for doing it not just once, but twice.
Right.
You put them in jail, you take them off the street, you've just cut shoplifting by a third, 33%, like that, with 300 people.
Right.
And so if you don't have that down, I mean, when we shake our heads, we had we talked about the police union chief in San Francisco saying we cut $125 million from the police budget.
Mm-hmm.
Police aren't on the street.
Mm-hmm.
What did they think was going to happen? And you have all these liberal cities going, oh, we have to backtrack on this.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And there they were with confidence a few years ago. No, if we have mental health workers going to domestic disputes, are you out of your freaking minds?
Well, brag. In New York, if you use the gun, as long as you don't pull the trigger, then we're not going to prosecute a felony.
Right.
Unless you commit another felony while you're doing it. Think about that. If they go in, some of these shoplifters, if they were to just take a gun, because most of them are going in and smash and grab or grab and run or whatever they're calling it. Imagine then if Bragg had followed through on that, and then they were carrying guns and walking in and just holding the guns to people while they grabbed whatever they wanted out of the store and left.
Right. I'm going to kill you if you don't give me this.
And Bragg is going,
no, we're not.
That's okay.
No, we're not going to prosecute them for gun crimes as long as they don't pull the trigger.
Right.
Now, the public opinion got that reversed.
Now,
but it was like that's what you voted for.
And if
you voted for this,
if the first grader chews his Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun and takes it in while his mommy is shopping, he goes to prison.
Well, get suspended.
Yeah. Not if Bragg were in control.
Death penalty.
Exactly.
Okay, let's take it further.
The
death penalty for the child.
If he wants to take archery or hunting safety, we'll send in a SWAT team.
Think about it. I mean, just liberalism. We need to get rid of archery and hunting safety courses in schools.
Yeah.
But
if you use a gun in the commission of a robbery.
Armed robbery, that's okay.
That's okay. No felony.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
We're good.
When you think about, I mean, it's so crazy. And that's, I guess that was the thought when you and I both saw that story that 20% of people, well, if he committed bribery, no, we think he should continue running for political office.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so we know he'll use his office to enrich himself because the bribery would be changing U.S. policy or enacting U.S. policy for personal bribe money, and 20% in the polling said, "Oh no, that'd be a good thing, and we'd keep him in office."
and
that wouldn't be a bad enough thing to keep him out of office.
And when then President Trump calls the then incoming president of Ukraine, Zelensky, on the phone and says, "Hey, part of your campaign, you were promising to crack down on corruption. We're going to hold you to that. Trump should be removed from office." I mean, that's where we are. Bribery? Who was it again? Biden? Not really. Nah. He's old. He probably doesn't even know he's getting the money.
I said the Uncle Leo defense. When he was shoplifting. I'm old. I don't know what's going on.
How long before we get that from Biden? I'm an old guy. I didn't know all that money was in my account. I never look at my account.
And then when Seinfeld goes to his parents, they go, and his mother goes, "Oh, yeah, we all steal batteries. We steal batteries all the time." What are you talking about? Oh, yeah, we always steal batteries.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, it could be advantageous to me.
Yeah.
Well, all right, we're now going to legalize stealing for seniors.
Yes. You got to start dressing all. That's what you got to do. Get you a one-piece leisure suit, and then you can work your way into the small crimes.
Gray my hair.
Yeah. Yep.
Cut it so it looks like I have a receding hairline.
Right. Yeah, and then drive your older vehicle when you do it.
Oh, yes.
And park weird.
And then claim poverty.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a senior and in poverty.
Yeah.
Look at my car. Just bring my second vehicle. It's 20 years old.
I'm just trying to feed my family.
Right.
Do you have a family? That's not relevant, and I'm not taking questions right now.
My family is my cat.
Wow. Yeah. Cats are people, too.
Right.
Love is love. I love my cat.
Cats have rights.
That's right.
Well, at least they think they think they do.
We're not sure if he's we're not sure if he's a criminal or an animal rights activist.
Or a psycho.
We're psycho. It could be all three.
Oh, man. We have a show today.
I think.
866-90 Red Eye.
Keep your engine humming in the heat this summer by keeping up with preventive maintenance. Think your PM is complete after your oil is changed? Think again. There's grease, transmission fluids, and gear oil to consider too. Transmission fluid, for example, prevents wear of gears, bearings, and bushings, protects against corrosion, and acts as a heat transfer fluid. You may not think about this every time you get behind the wheel, but as soon as it's not doing its job, you'll notice. Misapplication of transmission fluid can mean reduced fuel economy and abrupt or hard shifts if the static friction is too high. It can also cause sluggish operation at low temperatures if the viscosity is too high and leaking through seals if viscosity is too low. This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric. I'm Gary. All over the place Thursday here.
Yeah, it is. I think I said, did I say Wednesday earlier? I may have said Wednesday.
I was going to say, it was no problem because I think yesterday was all over the place Wednesday. There's just so many things going on. Coming up here, power providers beg the Biden administration for fossil fuels, saying renewable energy can't keep the grid reliable. Finally! You know, it seems like after you and I have been screaming about this for a couple of decades, that it's like finally the power, the regional power grids, the regional electricity providers are finally getting up and saying, this has to stop. We can't do this. This is pure insanity. Yeah. So we'll get to that later. You saw that Devon Archer was on Tucker Carlson's podcast.
Yeah.
And, and I would tell you, he made it harder. You know, he's trying to ride this fine line, though. I don't know if I'm sure you noticed it.
I got that from some of the stories in recent days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, he's trying to hint that it is all Biden, but he won't come out directly and say it.
Right.
Because, when even Tucker Carlson said, well, the Biden brand, brand, he goes, well, yeah, eventually it comes back to his father, but, he had an expertise, he knew about regulations and stuff like that. And he says, well, from whom? Basically whom? He goes, well, his father's, his brother, when his brother was alive, other people. But it eventually leads to his father. It's just like,
he's trying to slow walk it.
What it did do is it took away Goldman or anybody else or Jamie Raskin. It took away anything that they could possibly say where it doesn't lead to it. And plus, when you see the Washington Post now coming out and stating that, Biden gets 4 Pinocchios for not it should be a bottomless Pinocchio.
Right,
For I got my blank here.
For saying
China didn't take money from China. That his son did. So we'll get to that. And, also, our credit rating has been downgraded in the United States. Expect to pay more.
All right.
That was a big duh.
Yeah, of course.
We'll get to that and more.
Call in and get a word in edgewise. Eric Harley and Gary McNamara on Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
A couple of things, just because it's all over the place Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
The Joel Pollack column in Breitbart, the Department of Justice never prosecuted Hillary Clinton for conspiracy to defraud the U.S. with the Russian hoax. Think about that.
Yeah.
You actually had, if you believe that that is a crime that Donald Trump committed,
right?
If that's the legal basis that you're on, and he makes a great point. Hillary Clinton was attempting to defraud the entire U.S. government, and you actually can follow point by point the money trail.
Yeah.
Because Durham opened it up. So when I read this yesterday, I went, that's a great point.
Right.
It really is a great point that, she set it up. The money, they've got the money trail.
Mm-hmm.
They know what the money trail is. They know precisely what she did.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's denying it.
Right.
Nobody has ever asked Hillary Clinton in the Hillary Clinton friendly media, did you do this? This is the accusation. They know she did. And so if you're going after Trump and you're going to be consistent, now, there is no case. There is no case to go after Hillary Clinton for defrauding the U.S. government. We're just simply saying.
But if you're making one in the case of Trump, you can make it easier.
That case for Trump, you have a much better case with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, much easier to get there.
All the evidence is lined up for you, so that was just something that I thought was really interesting. Yesterday, he goes special, and he just writes, Special Counsel Jack Smith charged former President Donald Trump on Tuesday with 4 counts relating to his challenges of the 2020 presidential election, including conspiracy to defraud the United States. The supposed act of fraud was that Trump said the election had been stolen, despite knowing or at least being told otherwise. But if pushing a false claim of a stolen election is a federal crime, then Hillary Clinton, the Democratic Party, the media, and the Department of Justice also should be charged itself.
Right.
To recap, Hillary Clinton falsely claimed in 2016 that Russia was colluding with Trump. With help from election lawyer Mark Elias, Hillary's campaign, the Democratic National Committee, hired the Fusion GPS opposition research firm to create a phony dossier on Trump's Russia ties. Think about this.
Yeah.
If that is a crime that Trump committed because he just said so, you have the actions and behavior of the enterprise, which is laid out in the Durham report.
Right.
And so if it is, you need to go after Hillary for defrauding the U.S. government. He goes, they shopped the dossier successfully to the FBI. That began a spying campaign on a Trump aide. Aides like Jake Sullivan, now the national security advisor, continued to spread the Russia collusion claim within the media. And they knew it was false. They knew they created it.
Yeah.
After Trump won, the hoax took on a new life. Despite conceding to Trump the morning after Election Day, Hillary kept claiming that the election had in fact been stolen. The Department of Justice renewed surveillance warrants even after they knew the dossier was false. Outgoing FBI Director James Comey triggered the appointment of a special counsel to investigate, though he had reason to know there was no evidence of Russia collusion. So Comey was also attempting to defraud the U.S. government by the Jack Smith standard of going after Trump.
Yep.
And indeed, we know 0 Russia collusion was found. The hoax undermined the legitimacy of the incoming Trump administration and interfered with its ability to conduct foreign policy. Even after Mueller came up empty, the hoax took on new life in the form of the 2019 impeachment investigation, which focused on Trump's conversation with the Ukrainian president, but implied that the president was secretly trying to help Russia. In the 2020 election, the perpetuators of the old hoax claimed falsely that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. In short, there has never been a greater or more consequential hoax in modern American history than the Russia collusion hoax. And yet no one has ever been prosecuted for it. least of all Hillary Clinton, who ultimately was responsible for it. The Department of Justice, through Special Counsel John Durham, pursued a few low-level prosecutions, but no one ever targeted the overall fraud on the U.S. government. Though the story of how the Russia collusion hoax was concocted eventually emerged, and nobody is debating the facts of the Durham report at all, not even Democrats.
No.
And so if you're going to do it now, as we have said, you had crimes that were committed in there, the fraud of the one FBI agent, whatever. But as we said, you can tell lies. You can tell the worst lies. And you can attempt, as she did, to defraud the U.S. government. And you can lay out all the facts, not just by saying something.
Mm-hmm.
Trump simply said it.
Mm-hmm.
You actually have the enterprise of the people that were involved in it. You have the money trail of the money to create the fraud, right?
Yeah.
The money to create the fraud. We know that campaign money created the fraud. We know that the Hillary campaign, I'll add here to Joe Pollak's column, we know that the government fined the Hillary campaign for claiming that the money was being used for legitimate campaign expenses when it was actually used for the opposition research. So they lied about the money in order to try to hide where the money was actually going. The FEC caught them and fined them for that. So we know everything of the enterprise that Hillary Clinton attempted to defraud the U.S. government and nothing.
Yeah, right.
And that's because the whole thing with Trump is bogus. You can do things that are completely and totally immoral, but not necessarily illegal. Now, the line to the FBI, as we know, for Michael Sussman, as we only know from the one juror that talked, well, doesn't matter whether he lied, there's bigger problems.
Right.
Yeah, lie doesn't matter. We have more important things to look at. But we know that crimes were committed in there. Only one was punished, and that was Kevin Kleinsmith for changing, committing fraud on the FISA application warrant. But think of everything that came out of that. The FISA application debacle. But everything that came out of it was an attempt to defraud the U.S. government by the Hillary campaign, and nothing.
Well, all of those things were key. Sussman's lying to the FBI was key. Because if he had not gotten away with that lie, if it had not been successful, other things would not have happened. Kevin Kleinsmith and what he did in changing the very direction of it all by what he changed on the application for the FISA warrant. Those were all critical. The FISA warrant application was changed because they knew they wouldn't get the warrant without changing that item. Those were all critical. So these are especially heinous lies and critical lies to the entire equation. They are pillars that hold the entire thing up. Without them occurring, you wouldn't have had what you had. And you can just make it up out of thin air with Trump. I mean, you went full circle.
Yeah, I mean,
the special counsel, you did this yesterday. The special counsel himself is defrauding.
Yeah.
And he knows it.
Yeah, exactly. The special counsel, by doing this, is attempting to defraud the U.S. government.
By his own standards.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing that's mind-boggling. The other thing is, and I think we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, and I saw our friend Mark Levin talked about it, and he wrote yesterday, finally Comer agrees with me. For weeks I've said that Joe Biden is a co-conspirator in Hunter's FARA criminal violations. If Hunter Biden was considered a foreign agent and Joe Biden was working with him,
how is he not considered a foreign agent?
Right. Then Joe Biden, as vice president, And that was
That's
That's
great. That's
yeah.
brilliant.
Yep. He goes, he writes, we didn't need Archer's testimony to demonstrate it. It underscores what's already known.
Wow.
That he was that by doing it, it's not just the bribe, but the Far-a-law. And so, like I said, we're in for some interesting months coming up, are we not?
We are, and it's interesting that this week from the Devon Archer thing, so many things are coming along that are being laid out. I mentioned yesterday with the indictments coming down on Trump on the January 6th thing, that the timing, it was very clear. You had the stuff that was just ramping up and really coming together on the whole Biden thing. Well, inevitably, they were going to act on Trump. You're just going to have to. Yeah, but Trump. That's what happened this week with the special prosecutor. And the problem with that is that it exposes even further this two-tier justice system. We just lined it out once again. That by their own standards, they'll go after nothing and they will ignore, again, something that you can easily make the case on if you're going to use your own same standards.
Let me ask this. Let's take it a bit further. Where we see now when it comes to Ukraine and Burisma and where it's going and the possibility of the bribe, is everybody who was involved in impeachment number one and did it as what Nadler said. He said, what you're doing is unconstitutional. Remember, he said that to Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff.
Right.
What you're doing is unconstitutional. You're not letting the opposition call witnesses and do everything else.
Right.
Well, now that we know that what Trump was talking about is now clear that something nefarious was going on.
Right.
If they get the tapes from the
president of Burisma. Yeah.
Right. They get the tapes.
Yeah.
Does, by the Jack Smith standard of Trump defrauding the U.S. government, is everybody who was involved in that impeachment? Because you and I have said this for a long time. Was the impeachment about the fact that Trump was getting too close?
He was too close to the fire.
Yeah.
Because who took that information? Who was on that, by the way, fairly highly populated phone call between Trump and Zelensky? The CIA officer who was assigned to Biden and Ukraine when Biden was vice president was still there and was on that phone call when Trump was talking to Zelensky. He took that information to Adam Schiff's office. That's not a coincidence. It didn't just happenstance. It really feels like, to me, he was getting too close to the fire. He mentioned something specific that freaked that CIA officer out because he knew the details. He knew what had been going on. Keep in mind, there's a reason Joe Biden wasn't the nominee in 2016. Everybody inside the Beltway that had any power while he was vice president understood the concerns and the risk he was to the party.
Yeah, the Obama administration knew.
Yep.
So all interesting thing. And everything we're talking about is, again, by the Democrat standard that Jack Smith set up.
Absolutely.
That Democrats apparently all agree with.
Right.
So we're just trying to be consistent.
We're applying their standard.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, our credit rating was downgraded.
Darn it.
Here in the United States, which means things are going to get more expensive. The interest on the debt is going to rise more. The possibility of more government cutbacks is coming. One of the things that I thought was interesting, and this is the credit rating company Fitch downgraded the credit rating of the United States. Number one, when you talk about the how much more we're going to have to pay, because now the United States is more of a credit risk, which means there's going to be more of a demand that we're not going to buy Treasury bills unless you raise
the
interest rate, which is probably in the next couple of years going to put that alone over $1 trillion.
And we talked about that, touched on it last week about, the other interest rate hike that comes along that's not part of what the Fed is doing.
Yep.
And we hit on that, and here we are.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, 866-90 Red Eye. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Well, only the second time in history, first time in 2011, the Fitch has downgraded the credit rating of the United States. Wall Street Journal probably has it correct in their headline. Did you see this? Fitch downgrades America. The rating agency may be too optimistic about the U.S. fiscal future.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Because I look at it sometimes and I think, you go back, because you and I, we broke down everything, the housing and real estate market fallout and crash 2009, and broke that down and went all the way back to, the article September 30th, 1999 in the New York Times that warned what a subprime lending market would do. And we often questioned I don't know if it's the analytical skills or just the system that is set up in order to, in terms of the rating, how you rate in this case, they rate the U.S. or any of them that are giving us our rating, right? Because when we talked about bundling those mortgages, they all had AAA ratings, and they all had, well, of course they did. They had the implied backing of the U.S. government through Fannie and Freddie.
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought that it popped into my mind, of course, to current day. Well, yeah, they didn't say it directly, but it had the implied guarantee of the United States. Hunter had the implied guarantee of his father.
Well, exactly.
I know it's two different things, but that popped into my mind.
It's like the question, where did he get the expertise? Well, his brother, his dad. No. Let's stay with his dad.
Yeah.
It wasn't expertise. It was the direct line to him. But no, in this case, all right, they make a good point, the Wall Street Journal. They may be too optimistic, because I guess my question is, are they scoring it like the CBO office, or are they scoring it based on what they have in place right now? Because so much of it, if you think about where we are with the economy, with monetary policy, we touched on this last week, and I forget the article that I mentioned, but it was talking about monetary policy, and then you get into the real interest rate hikes, and this is what we could be seeing now. Okay, the credit rating of the U.S. now is dropped, which means you're going to have to bump up that interest rate in order to attract others if you want them buying those Treasury bills, and that could be here for a long time. But are they slow rolling this drop in the credit? I mean, I have to wonder, because we are at that point, the very real point of dealing with now, because higher interest rates, the greater risk in terms of being able to service the interest on the national debt. And we said when we get to a point where we can no longer service the interest, just the interest on the national debt, that's the tipping point, and that's the massive hole in the
I think the tipping point comes before that. I think the tipping point comes when America realizes that things have to be cut.
Well, that's it.
That would be the
warning what's going down.
Because you would have to have, for example, if we start getting $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion, $2 trillion in debt, that has to be paid every year.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be paid.
Right.
You're not going to raise taxes that much more in order to cover what the government has to cut. That's why we have stated before. Anybody who sits there and says, and remember, and this is a fault of Democrats and Republicans, and I'm talking about the voter who believes that we can solve the debt problem by cutting foreign aid and wasteful spending. It's way out of control. One of the problems is that now everything that Fitch said wasn't true. Some of it was completely and totally bogus. We'll get to that in a moment. But what they said is growth. We're spending so quickly that growth can't catch up. Doesn't matter if we still have economic growth. Spending is so out of control that we can't catch up. The bogus part of what they said, let me just get it here where it said the rating downgrade, this is a quote, the rating downgrade of the United States reflects the expected fiscal deterioration over the next 3 years, a high and growing general government debt burden, and the erosion of governance relative to AA versus AAA rated peers over the last 2 decades that has manifested in repeated debt limit standoffs and last-minute resolutions. That's a load of horse manure from Fitch, because what they're saying, and I agree with the Wall Street Journal, that's bogus, because that's the only thing that showed any type of fiscal restraint.
Right.
What Fitch is saying is, and then the Yellen and the Biden administration basically said the solution is we're having our debt's too great. And Yellen came out and actually said the solution to the problem is more debt.
Well, no, austerity right. Typically would be the right thing to do, right? Now, if you start mentioning any kind of austerity or trying to fix the problem or going the opposite direction, we're going to, that's not the answer. We need to spend more.
But, I mean, so Fitch says the credit raters aren't perfect oracles from the Wall Street Journal. We don't agree with Fitch's complaint about debt limit standoffs, since that's been the only recent times when anyone in Washington considers spending restraint. So it's like your credit card's out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And the bank comes to you and says, look, you've got a problem because, you're making the minimum payment, but
and you've hit your limit.
Right, you've hit your limit, and we believe that you're having problems making the minimum payment. Now, we heard that you and your spouse are talking about the fact of, the fact that you can't borrow any money anymore. Well, we're going to lower your credit rating because the consideration is you want to have less credit. I mean, That's how insane it is. But then they go to here it is. Democrats are attacking Fitch, and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen criticized the decision as arbitrary and based on outdated data. Outdated? Her own department on Monday increased the government's expected borrowing from July to September, just July to September, to $1 trillion from $733 billion. That's just for 3 months. The budget expectation, or the borrowing expectation, is now $100 billion more a month. Just for 3 months, and she just said that on Monday. Wow. And she also claims, listen to this, that governance has improved under President Biden, citing the infrastructure bill and other investments in America's competitiveness. She must be joking, Since when is blowout spending a credit recommendation? I mean, it's completely. So you're sitting there and it's like the doctor comes to you and says, you got to quit smoking. Mm-hmm. And your solution to the doctor is, you're right. We need to do something about this. I'm smoking a pack a day. I need to quit smoking, so I'm going to smoke 3 packs a day. That's the response from the government.
Yeah.
Complete insanity.
Yeah, it is, and it shouldn't be a surprise at all. Because you really can't get full control of the capital and ultimately the means of production until you break the hell out of it.
As they write here, and what are they borrowing the money on? This is the other thing too, as they point out here, and I'll delve a little bit more into even how far the Wall Street Journal goes. The EV subsidies in the hilarious named Inflation Reduction Act were scored at a cost of $14 billion, but Goldman Sachs estimates they will cost $393 billion because the subsidies are open-ended. Goldman estimates that the climate spending will cost $1.2 trillion, 3 times the CBO's estimate. Now, the problem with this is the government is borrowing money that we are day by day paying more interest on. That money, what they claim we're going to be spending, they way underestimated, so we have to borrow more money on it, and that money is going to industries that still can't make a profit on what they produce because nobody wants to buy the damn thing, because the economy doesn't work by the centralized government saying, these are the products that we wish you to buy. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work that way. So the companies can't make the profit. So the government is going into massive debt, more interest on it, to give that money to corporations that still can't make a money on the products that the government is forcing them to make. That's the insanity that we're living in right now, but it's what the American people have wanted. Understand that. Maybe not you. You're a conservative. Not me, not Eric, but maybe not you. But the vast majority of the voter has been behind this. And Republicans ought to have been screaming yesterday. I didn't hear much.
Well, no, we're borrowing money to flush it down the toilet.
To flush it, yep.
That's insane.
It's absolute pure insanity that and everything is. I mean, that's where we are now. Everything is insane. I was reading something the other day. People are just turning off the news because everything's insane. Oh, yeah, that'll make it better.
Uh-huh. Yeah, ignore it.
Yeah.
No, actually, they would love you to not.
Yeah. Don't object to it. Do exactly what they want.
Exactly.
Ignore it. Just go, I hope I get my share.
Right.
Yeah, that'll work for you.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll all work out.
Coming up, we'll see Kevin O'Leary from was on Fox News yesterday and talked about it. We'll get to that coming up. But I mean, just you read this and you're just like, you just throw your hands up. Yesterday we had one of our listeners say, "Could you give us some hope?" We gave you some hope.
Yeah,
not
it's all
on,
gone.
Not on this topic. That hope's gone. Not on this topic.
Well, because tell me where the turnaround's going to be. Tell me where that is. It's like when we talk about these cities where they've defunded the police and now crime is skyrocketing. Tell me where the turnaround is in San Francisco. What, a bunch of Republican conservatives in San Francisco are going to be elected to city council and the mayor's office? You think that? No. Where's the turnaround? There isn't one.
No, there isn't turnaround in that or the federal government. No,
it will implode fully and completely. They're trying to step out of the way of it. I wouldn't try and reach out and catch a falling knife either.
Thanks for the Tragically Hip reference, fully and completely.
Yeah.
One of their albums.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought. I'm going to go, he just talked about the hip.
And so here we are on this massive scale. But it goes back a long, long time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's
school lunches. Yeah, there's too much fat. We're going to cut them in your school. No, you're not.
Well, they weren't actually going to cut it. They were going to reduce the rate of growth and make
exactly
make the richest schools pay more of it because because the school lunches are subsidized across the board. But that was the first indication I had, and that goes back, and I was still relatively new as a talk show host. Goes back to 94, 95, I believe.
Right.
So I'd only been in talk radio for 5 or 6 years when they polled the Republicans, and the Republicans said no. This is when the Republicans wanted to reduce the rate of growth of Medicaid and school lunches,
right,
and or Medicare. And it was like, well, you're going to starve. You want to kill old people and starve kids. And the Republicans came out and said the vast majority of Republicans thought the school lunch program was a great program for the federal government to be involved in. And I said, well, if that's the case, if you believe that the federal government should be involved, if Republicans believed back then that the federal government should be involved in taking your tax dollars, running it through the bureaucracy, and then sending it back to subsidize every single school lunch, even in the richest schools, and you believe that's a good program, we're going to end up right where we are right now.
Yep, here we are.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Surviving and thriving as an owner-operator has just as much to do with managing costs as it does with generating revenue. Like the chief financial officer of any company, you have to be concerned about rising costs, especially without increases in revenue. Trying to reduce costs, let alone make sense of them, can be a complicated task. Understanding basic principles of operating costs can save you thousands of dollars a year. A penny saved could be $1,000 earned. Saving just 1 penny per mile over 100,000 miles driven annually will deliver $1,000 to the bottom line at the end of the year. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Shell Rotella with advanced synthetic technology. For more information, go to overdriveonline.com to the Overdrive's Partners in Business section of the website for more detail on Business 101 and many other topics.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90-RED-EYE. Let's hear from Kevin O'Leary on the United States credit rating being downgraded. And most people just probably ignore a story like this, not knowing how it's going to impact them. And one of the things I was reading, I think it was one of the business magazines here. Let me just see very quickly before we even get to that. Let me see. It was the Business Times talked about the fact of how people can't move out of their homes. People, they want to move out, but the fact is they have very low-rate mortgages, and they can't afford to buy a new home.
Right.
And so that means the inventory of homes that are available for sale, are going down because people can't afford to move and now this is even going to make it worse on your mortgage. But here's Kevin O'Leary talking about what this means.
Well, it's really about government and policy. There's no way to sugarcoat this at all. It's bad. And I'll tell you how you measure it's bad. Basically, when you downgrade the U.S. economy, which is what this downgrading is, you are losing a little faith in the U.S. dollar and the U.S. Treasury bill, because the default currency of the world, defined by every commodity priced by U.S. dollars, is the good faith of the U.S. government. And the whole world trusts it. Most sovereign funds keep the majority of their liquidity in U.S. dollars. That got hurt 24 hours ago, because now you start to ask yourself, well, where is this going? A downgrade from AAA to AA, does it go to single A? Now, if you're a sovereign wealth fund, you start to put that in your mind, and the bottom line for you and me is the cost of capital goes up. In other words, what it costs for us to borrow money to fund the government in deficit goes up. No sugarcoating that. Now, how does this actually affect the next 24 months? Well, let me explain. Think about the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. We're printing billions of dollars. Government claims it has merit. It's important to do this. But at the same time, that's just a lot of spending, and that increases the deficit. And that's why Finch did this. They downgraded it. And I wouldn't say it was the two bills that caused the camel's back to be broken, but it was enough for them to say, okay, I've seen enough. Now, for me and you, or anybody at a kitchen table in America, your car loan just went up from $5,000 to somewhere between 7 and 9%.
Really?
That's not going to help. So the cost of your loan and your borrowing and your mortgage going up, period.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
You wonder how it's going to affect you. Everything will be more expensive because it's more expensive.
Yep.
Anybody that's trying to get capital, and now interest rates are going to go up significantly. And this is all because we believe that government can provide things for us free. We've seen inflation and what that has done to the American household budget, and now you're seeing what government spending is, how it affects you now when it comes to the interest rates that you have to pay and future government benefits that you expected to get may now be less.
Right.
Call in and get a word in edgewise. Eric Harley and Gary McNamara on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. And I know that, when you see things like that, most people say, that's Wall Street news. I have no interest in it.
Mm-hmm.
Things like the credit rating. But it's going to affect every single American, which is why I'm glad Kevin O'Leary said, okay, here's what it means.
Yeah.
If you're paying 5% for an auto loan, it's now going to be 7 to 9%.
Yeah.
And mortgages are going to go up. The cost of everything, because when the interest rate goes up, the cost of everything goes up because so much is financed in the corporate world, small business loans, you name it. Everything will go up in price. It's something that for years, probably one of the frustrating things when you sit and you do this every day and you understand basic economics, which isn't that hard to understand. It really isn't rocket science. And knowing that we were eventually going to get to this place and talking about it, and really, as a talk show host, and I'm not talking about any of our listeners, but the vast majority of people didn't care as long as they got what they thought was their stuff, or they could get free stuff.
Oh, sure.
They were okay with it.
Right.
And now, inevitably, it's sort of like the whole defund the police and cops. There was no other place we were going to get to than we are right now.
Yeah.
And there is no other reaction that's expected than we got from the government, which is, all right, we're being told that we have this huge problem now. We're borrowing way too much money than we should be borrowing. And this is going to affect it. Now we're going to have to pay more of an interest rate, which is going to cut into the budget. Yeah. And we understand as a government we can't tax. Really, we can't tax. We can't grow the government. So our only solution is to borrow more money. Was there any criticism? Was there a public outrage when that was basically the answer from the government yesterday? No. Nobody. And so that's one of the problems is, and that's why I mentioned that I read that things are getting so bad that people are just turning off the news. Well, that'll solve the problem.
Well, it's
I'll
interesting.
just pretend it's not happening.
Right. So CNBC has a piece on J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon. He calls the Fitch Ratings U.S. downgrade ridiculous and says it doesn't really matter. He says it's ridiculous that other countries have higher credit ratings than the U.S. when they depend on the stability created by the U.S. and its military. Well, that's the whole point, stability. Now, what he says is it doesn't really matter because the markets, it's the market, not rating agencies, that determines borrowing costs. Not completely. There is some fluctuation and competition in the marketplace, no doubt. But he's the one that talked about the diminishing savings, right? Remember that? last year,
right.
and said by the summer of 23, by the end of the summer of 23, and here we are, that those savings were going to be depleted. So what he's talking about is the market, right? So then what happens is that, what is the market? Well, the market is borrowers and lenders. Well, the borrower now, according to him, on the average, has a lot less in savings. They have a greater need. What does that mean? They're a greater risk. So let's say that the market, it's the market that determines it. That's not. I think that's a broad statement, and I disagree with that. As a whole, it is in part. But what happens when the market then starts to assess that borrower on the average? Again, if they have less in savings and a greater need to borrow, they're a greater risk, which means they're going to be a higher interest rate just based on their own standing.
Well, but I think a point that he's missing is, and again, I sort of agree with the Wall Street Journal saying they didn't go far enough. Our situation is more dire.
Yeah.
The recognition of a credit agency of the problems that you have isn't part of that, at least market-based. They're not they're not just
your ability.
Right.
The U.S. as a whole,
right.
Our ability
right.
Fiscally to sustain this. And that's what they're saying,
right.
and that's
it is
that's market.
And this is with the criticism that we have of some of the Fitch analysis. Fitch analysis that because we got close, we didn't get close to default, but we got close to having to shut down portions of the government, but we weren't near default. We were never going to be at default ever.
Right.
And so for them to bring that up, that was a problem when that is the only way that we're showing fiscal restraint, and Fitch is saying the problem is we're borrowing too much money, that was almost contradictory in that statement that they made. It doesn't make any damn sense.
And you know what?
By the way, does everybody have to BS
all
the time?
You know what Jamie Dimon said about that part of it? Here's the quote. Quote, "We should get rid of the debt ceiling. It's used by both parties." End quote. And he's talking about sowing uncertainty into the markets because of the debt ceiling, and we should just quit talking about the debt ceiling. We should just do away with the debt ceiling.
Good, Jamie.
And that's going to do away with the problem.
Good, then get away. I shouldn't have a credit limit on my credit card.
Exactly.
Run your bank that way.
Right.
No limit on the credit card.
Quit judging people market-based. J.P. Morgan Chase should quit judging people based on their income and their ability to pay.
All credit rating services should go away, and banks should not use credit rating services whatsoever. There should be no judgment as to the credit risk of anyone.
That's right. The left wants equity. Let's go.
Right. No credit limits.
Everybody is
Democrats,
going to be in
that's one. No credit limits and no credit ratings used to judge anybody's credit.
That's right. Ready?
By the way,
everybody go.
Wait, hold it. What would interest rates be if you did that? Interest rates would go through the roof.
9 million %.
I mean, it would go through
and that's a conservative estimate. 9 million %.
Loan sharks would be going, God, now we're competitive.
Yeah. As long as you come see me by Tuesday.
Loan sharks would be saying, actually, we have a better handle on the credit risk of our customer than the banks do.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I'm only going to take one leg from you. They're going to take your skin and your firstborn.
I mean, it just you shake your head at the idiocy.
Well, no, this is where they are.
I
joked years ago.
By the way, I know what Diamond's trying to do.
Yeah.
Well, anything that causes uncertainty,
the turmoil,
right now,
the conflict,
right, and the conflict right now or the uncertainty right now, get rid of. But that's not looking at it long term.
Well,
because long term you can't do that.
But what is the conflict about?
Borrowing too much damn money,
being fiscally responsible or not. Those are your two directions.
By the way, I shot myself in the head just because it's getting to be so insane.
Well, it's just, and I joked years ago about, man, what's the first time I said that? I think they should just do away with the debt ceiling. When we talked about it over the years, it's like, just go up to $100 trillion. And the joke was about, look, they're not serious. It's going to get there eventually anyway. Quit bothering us with the details. And, of course, that was tongue-in-cheek. When you get very serious about it, because if you look at it with serious eyes, if you look at it with reasonable eyes, it's as serious as it gets. And to say the debt ceiling should be gone because of the whole back and forth, both parties use it.
I don't even know what that means.
Here's the thing. I don't believe either party is serious about the national debt. But why is that?
Because the public is.
Because we are not serious.
Yeah. The members of Congress, when we used to hear, and we don't get it as much anymore, well, Congress isn't doing the will of the people. Yeah, they are.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly are.
You talked about it when you started your talk show career. And you come on the air, hear ye, hear ye. What were they talking about then? The whole big sweep, right?
Yeah, it was the big sweep in my first year being a talk show host, where
and that was
people were actually outside 89, 90 probably, because I got in 89, so probably was 90. And there was this whole it was the last protest I remember about debt, when all over the nation and people were outside congressional offices all over the country with brooms. We need a clean sweep of the people because the debt was too bad. That's the last protest I've ever remembered, national protest, any protest of the debt. Right. And I remember, because I remember going out, and I mean, it was actually hilarious, because I went and this was, I had started my talk radio career in Niagara Falls. And so the listeners were telling me, hey, there's a big thing going on. You got to show up. Mm-hmm. So I showed up, and there's probably 100 people outside the congressional office, all with brooms, these big brooms, and they're sweeping the steps. I mean, it was funny. It was actually pretty funny, but they were serious. There was a concern. You don't have that today.
Well, think about it. The GOP in 2016, we're going to do away with Obamacare. They win, and then in 2017 in office, we're just going to do away with the part that you pay for it. We're going to keep the other stuff, which is to say,
we'll borrow more money, and Republicans were okay with it.
And that's because their base was screaming, don't you dare do away with the handouts. But is the answer do away with the debt ceiling?
Yeah, that's how you solve debt problems, is simply say,
quit talking about it, right? That's what he's saying.
Yeah, you're
quit talking about your debt problem, and you won't have one. That's what the Democrats right now have been saying about a number of things. Quit talking about inflation going up. Remember that? Quit talking about how inflation is going up. Inflation's not going. It's
Inflation's
going up because you're talking
about it. Yeah.
And what he's basically saying is the back and forth about interest rates, or about the spending, the debt ceiling, is the problem. The talk is the problem.
You know, I look at it, and I know both of us have great credit ratings. On every one of my credit cards, there's a credit limit.
Yeah.
I've said the only time I remember one time that I think I had to I wasn't making a lot of money. I had a $1,500, repair bill. And you know what a credit problem is for me? I mean, my mentality is having, not being able to pay off the balance every month.
Yeah. Right.
And it took me like 4 months to pay it off. Mm-hmm. It was back years ago. Mm-hmm. And I was absolutely panicking when I saw the interest rate. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not a credit problem. Neither are you. Yet there's credit limits set on what we can borrow, even though I've never been near the credit limit, and I pay off the balance every single month.
Right. And it's based on
and I use them because I'm really big. I don't have to be, but it's so ingrained in me. I'll sit there and go, I got this big purchase. All right, where's the cycle of my credit card right now? Oh, this one just billed me yesterday. Oh, then I'm going to put it on that one, and I've got almost 60 days to pay it off.
Yeah.
I still have that mentality. That's
Right.
never gone away. I don't need to do that, but it's just the mentality. But still,
But the
Credit
assessment is
limits
based
there.
on your ability to pay.
yeah.
And, we can talk about this, drop in the U.S. credit rating, but the fact of the matter is that is not as relevant as the lack of will to do something about it by the American people. There's your real credit rating. And that's what everybody else looks at. They can see that they hit an iceberg, but they're still dancing.
No, that's a great point. It's not only a credit rating looking at what government's doing, but what is the will of the people to
Right.
solve the problem.
Right.
And you wonder if there were protests outside of congressional offices, like when I first became a talk show host, right after Paul Revere, was
Yes.
yelling the British were coming.
Right.
But so I think it was 90 was the clean sweep. But at that point, credit ratings could look at it. The people are really upset about it, and it looks like the other party's going to get in that, and there'll be more fiscal restraint.
Right.
You have a better credit rating.
Right.
866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. Coming up following the top of the hour, something that everybody will want us to talk about and get into, the minutia of it, and probably spend 20 hours on it. U.S. women's soccer.
Yeah, the rest of our show will be dedicated to that.
No, there will be a comment on that
All right.
controversy over the last couple of days.
All right.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Hurley. So, getting interesting.
Yeah?
the U.S. women's soccer team that, of course, is causing controversy because of majority, basically ignoring the Star-Spangled Banner when it comes on and all that. And
Right.
I could care less. I mean, that's, to get me to watch soccer would be, men's or women's, would be almost a miracle.
Right.
To begin with. But former U.S. women's soccer star Carly Lloyd, who's now an analyst, just blasted them. Apparently they got into they got through the preliminary round. They won one game, and then the next two were ties, including a scoreless tie.
Mm-hmm.
And so she attacked them and went after them and just said they don't have the mentality. They don't have the winning mentality. There's too many other things that they care about. They seem to care more about the celebrity than they do winning a game, the game. And she just thought that the celebration after a 0-0 tie was just out of it, and they don't have the mentality to do it. She didn't. It said she backed off. She didn't back off because she said, when I saw her, it wasn't like the mea culpas that you see. She just said, hey, I'm just so passionate about women's soccer that, and I was on the soccer team. She was on for like 15 years. She was on a long time. But I just thought that it raised a great question that I'd seen on social media yesterday. Because when you go to the blogs, because whenever it comes up, I mean, it's one of the things that has gone viral, what the U.S. women's soccer team is doing and not really, getting excited about the Star-Spangled Banner and, the questions on social media. Why are you playing for the USA?
Right.
Just go pro.
Right.
If you basically are spitting on the USA and you think the USA is evil, why are you playing for the team?
Right.
You know, and you know, there are people saying, well, they should sing the Star-Spangled Banner. I disagree with it. Not only should they not sing the Star-Spangled Banner, but they should get up there and tell America why they're really there. We hate the United States. I'm Megan Rapinoe. I hate the United States. I hate women's soccer. I think men should be playing it.
Right.
And I hate the United States. And so I'm playing for myself. And I'm playing for the fact that maybe I can get, more money in endorsements. I really don't give a damn about play. Be honest with the American people. Don't sugarcoat it.
Right.
I go the opposite of the people who say they should be singing the Star-Spangled Banner. I don't want them to lie or fake.
No. They are who they are.
Yes.
And love is love. I don't even know how that applies. But Rapinoe is, when I heard, she's retiring or whatever, and I thought, okay, so she can go make money. She's leaving soccer so she can actually, women's soccer, so she can go make money.
Oh, she's been on it for a while.
And so
there's been questions whether she should even be playing for the
right,
because she's older.
Right.
But again,
the idea
I don't know.
is, but that's the first thing that hit me is that, look, if you're not supporting the game, if you're not into it, and you're not into the U.S., I've seen that before. I don't need to get outraged at, the women's soccer team or anybody else. I mean, I've seen that. I know what that is. I also don't, by the way, one of the things that came around for football, really, if you think about it, Damar Hamlin and his situation kind of changed the tone from some of the liberal media types that were covering football when he talked about his faith.
Oh, should have seen him in the press conference the other day.
Yeah.
Every other word out of his mouth.
And so when you see that, it's like the people understand it. But also for those who are watching women's soccer, when they look at it, I get it. I've seen that before, protesting the U.S.
Yawn.
I don't care. Doesn't impress me.
Now, it did bring up the question on social media yesterday. Are you unpatriotic for not cheering for an unpatriotic U.S. women's soccer team? What I like, though, in social media, the people that say, you have to care. They're representing America. No, they're not. They're representing themselves.
Actually, they're not.
They're not.
They're not.
It's like,
nobody should try and make that case. They don't represent the U.S.
Man, me, if I'm playing for the United States, man, I'm draped in the flag.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Jim Craig. For those who don't know, Jim Craig was, to me, for us, it's so normal. Jim Craig, the goalie for the U.S. Olympic hockey team in 1980.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He draped himself in the flag after. I mean, that would be me. I'd be running all over the place.
I'll never forget that image, by the way. It's ingrained.
Yeah.
Not just because you see it a lot still today, but, when the anniversary comes up.
What I think about is Jack O'Callahan with his hands raised up. Basically, he's on the ground is Mike Ramsey, the defenseman, and there's Jack O'Callahan with his hands up in the air, and Mike Ramsey's laying on the ice. That's everybody's behind him. That's the photo.
Yeah.
That is. And then to me, that's the number one photo, just because of the intensity of that moment. And then Jim Craig looking up where he's got the flag draped over him, looking up to see if he can see his father. In the stands. I mean, that was. But yeah, I mean, that's the kind of stuff I want to see. Otherwise, don't play for the USA.
Right.
I represent the United States, but I hate them. So I'm just going to be.
You don't represent the U.S. You play soccer.
Yeah. I'm going to have this very snarky attitude constantly. That's what I'm going to snarky all the time.
Yeah.
But what I like is the point person, the most well-known person is Megan Rapinoe on the U.S. women's soccer team. And right before they play, she states that men should be able to play women's soccer.
Right. She doesn't believe in her own sport.
I know. That's the ultimate. It's like, that's really a great marketing thing. United States sucks. And you know something? I hate women's soccer. Men should be able to play it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I get out of it.
Yeah, on her way out the door. Not as a new player coming in.
Right.
Not as a rookie.
Yeah.
On her way out the door.
I'm here to grow women's soccer as long as men can play.
That's right.
How many times have I done that today? I'm on every topic. It's and yes, the finger is pointed at my head when I do that.
And quite frankly, they don't deserve the outrage. Not from me.
Nah.
If somebody else wants to be angry about it, they can be angry about it. They can do whatever they're going to do.
Been there,
but
done
they
that.
didn't. You're not. Are you going to force them to be patriotic? You can't.
No.
And I'm not going to spend my time or energy doing that. It's not going to happen. I've seen it before. I know what I'm looking at. I know what, in this case, not looking at.
Well, yeah, they're not going to get my support. In '99 when they beat China. I mean, that was a great. That was great. I watched that game. I don't think I probably watched any of the other games, but even the documentary on that one. I mean, that was, with Mia Hamm and everybody else. I mean, that was just that was pure greatness. But sorry if you play for if you play for Canada, I expect to see you cheering I expect the maple leaf all over you. I mean, that's just the thing that you expect. And there's this thing of, it's the what it is, I think, for so many young people is they don't realize how good they have it. When you've always had something, we came, most of us came from parents that lived through the Depression, went through World War II, and the sacrifice that people went through in World War II. Yeah. And what they went through the Depression.
No, it's a great point. It is because both of my parents born during the Depression. Your dad lived through. He would have been a young child during the Depression.
Yeah, he was,
and he remembers that.
Yeah, I mean,
he remembers World War II.
26, he was born. So, he hit his in 36. He was 10 years old, and then that's so he would. Yeah, he went through. He remembers it. He remembers. I was talking about the fact he remembers the Orson Welles War of the Worlds in 39. So yeah, I mean they all went through that, and they know what being without is like. And the other thing is, and I don't know why it was almost an epiphany when I watched the History Channel. Remember the series, The Men Who Made America? And I started thinking about, the mid 1800s and looking, when the Industrial Revolution really started going in this, country, and then the next, 50 years, what happened. Yeah. And you realize that what people didn't have, what kind of lives they lived. When I read a book on Lewis and Clark, they talked about the fact in the late 1700s that something that was not, that still is not effectively communicated to the generations of today is everybody was constantly scared of dying.
Right. Yeah.
Because everybody was a laborer. Didn't matter who you were a laborer.
Sure.
You did farm work. And if you got a cut, you could die. If you broke a leg, you could die. Yeah. Injuries that aren't even thought about as serious, you died.
Right.
And it's like that has never been effectively communicated to modern society what it was even like 150, 200 years, 150 to 250 years ago. That the fact is, and I remember after, watching the Men Who Built America, I went, wow. Except for having like more property and bigger homes, the average person lives like a billionaire from 150 years ago, what we have.
Yeah.
We live like, and it's all because of technology. Very little suffering, even with the things that, the things if you look at the economic downturns that we have had, the quality of life that the average American has lived, and the generations of today, their grandparents or great-grandparents are dead. The stories aren't even being told on how tough it is. The diseases that used to kill.
Oh, yeah.
My father, you talk about my dad who's still alive. He can relate, the fact of how people were scared of polio.
Well, even the technology in modern ages, since the 60s and 70s, and even more recent, that has accelerated treatment or in some cases even cured situations.
Oh, yeah, the technology.
So you've always had the situation where there was so little worry. And also little sacrifice to get there.
When my dad was a teenager, antibiotics didn't exist. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine a world without antibiotics?
Right.
And then in the beginning of World War II is when the sulfa drugs came out, but penicillin didn't come, I don't believe till near the end of the war. Mm. Think about that. And so we live in such luxury compared to generations of the past, and their struggles always could be told to the next generation. Parents could tell their kids. Well, we haven't had that. My life has been great because of technology.
Well, even those as after the phone was in every house, you still had to go to a house or somewhere to call. Exactly. Now you've got it in your hand.
Right.
If there's an accident, if there's an emergency, wherever you're standing, you can call for help.
And the fact is, we haven't fought a major, like a World War II. Mm-hmm. And so generations they just assume that everything is there and everything should be there. Mm-hmm. Money should be there. Life should be easy, for you. That, they're taught that the society they live in is evil. Well, they don't even understand, as we've talked about before, they don't even understand what makes our country great, our Constitution. They don't even understand. The majority of Americans don't, and it's much greater as you get to younger generations, don't even understand about the three branches of government and the separation of powers. They don't even understand what makes us different than China or Russia. Right. They have no idea. They have no clue. They're operating on ignorance, and they're a bunch of spoiled brats.
Right.
Walking around going, I've got everything, I want everything, I'm entitled to everything, and I don't get exactly what I want. We suck, and we're no better than anybody else. Well, actually, we are.
Right.
And that's not based on arrogance. It's based on understanding the system that we live under and the genius of it. And they don't. And so when you got a bunch of spoiled brats that play, on the U.S. women's soccer team who don't appreciate the country that they came from, that's to be expected. It's what we have nurtured.
Yep.
In many cases.
Yep.
And in many cases, there are other athletes that are not like that. But there are many athletes that are professional that are not like that. You just happen to have in the influence of U.S. women's soccer, where they come across as a bunch of, arrogant snobs who don't appreciate what they have.
Exceptionalism can't be taught. It's the wrong thing. You can't even have those thoughts anymore. So it's no wonder that they know nothing about it. They haven't lived through it. They haven't been taught it. And this is where we are. Not all of them, but many of them. You want me to cheer them on? I can't change how they think.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Curley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So we won't be talking women's soccer again till another 4 years, whenever.
I guess.
That was the best, though, for me. I mean, I burst out laughing when Megan Rapinoe she's going to retire, and now she's advocating, now that she's retiring, that men play women's soccer. I mean, that was just the ultimate.
Yeah.
Just like, okay.
And all the women coming into the sport were saying, I'm sorry, what? What were you saying on your way out the door? I'm sorry, huh? What?
I'm out the door. Let the men in.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no thanks.
Coming up following the bottom of the hour, regional energy providers are, well, here's the headline. Power providers beg Biden for fossil fuels, say renewable energy alone can't keep grid reliable.
Gee.
So if the Biden administration, by the way that they reacted to the credit rating being lowered because of too much debt, and what came out of the Biden administration is to solve the problem of too much debt, let's take out more debt, I can imagine their reaction to this one. Because the Biden administration will do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Of what should be done. Again, another Seinfeld episode.
Yeah. It's opposite day.
I'll do it again.
Yeah. I'm sure Biden will see it and go, oh, okay. Yeah. More oil and natural gas. You bet. I'm sure.
And a poll on bribery. We'll get to that and more on the way.
Gary McNamara and Eric Harley taking your calls. 1-866-90-RED-EYE.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Listen when and where you want if you can't listen live overnight. That's right. We make it very easy for you. Well, regional electricity providers tasked with keeping America's lights on warned yesterday that the Biden administration must delay the retirement of fossil fuel power plants to give renewables time to catch up or else risk major energy shortfalls. And even, by the way, even on this, they didn't go where they should go.
No.
They said grid reliability would be jeopardized by quickly transitioning electricity use from coal and natural gas to green alternatives such as wind and solar. The transmission groups, which collectively deliver power from energy sources to tens of millions of homes in dozens of states, told reporters that extreme heat conditions this summer underscore the need to slow the closures of power plants, particularly those using coal. I'm not saying now is the time to double down on fossil fuels. I'm just saying now is the time to slow on the removal of those assets from our footprint, said Larry Nickel, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Southwest Power Pool, a regional transmission organization serving 14 states across the central U.S. and South Dakota to Louisiana. Well, again, he's wrong. Unless you're going to have natural gas plants, you can't be closing down coal. You've got to have the natural gas plants because you cannot survive the grid. And this is they're so afraid of the pushback from the Biden administration that they're like, oh, we're not saying it's time to double down on fossil fuels. No, actually, it's time to double down on fossil fuels.
Yeah, it is.
Because of where the country is going and the electricity usage we're going to have, we cannot provide reliable, consistent power with solar and wind. And we don't have, a buddy of mine did some research the other day and said he can't find worldwide any nuke plant starting in the United States. There's one that opened here in the last 6 months, but he said he couldn't find one. I've got to check to see if that's the case. But nobody wants a nuke plant in their backyard. So even though you have some on the left now warming up to nuclear power, still, NIMBY effect, that's not happening. Two other major electricity suppliers, PJM Interconnection and Tri-State Generation and Transmission, offered similar warnings. I would stress the need for a balanced portfolio. You do need wind, you do need solar, but you do need something to back it up. Well, you don't need solar and wind.
No.
You may want solar and wind. You don't need solar and wind. And if you have solar and wind that has to be backed up by coal and natural gas, you're going to pay much greater electricity prices, and you have to subsidize across the board. You have to government subsidy or skyrocket the price of electricity.
But this is the problem when you even have the industry, when you have the energy providers not going the full measure here.
Yep. They're afraid. Well, they see, like we said, Biden administration, our credit rating's been downgraded. Well, why? Because you're borrowing too much money. All right. Send the Treasury Secretary out that we have the solution. Well, what's the solution to the problem that we're borrowing too much money? Borrow even more. So the insanity continues there. If the insanity's there, why not the insanity here? If they get too loud, Biden administration, well, they want more coal and natural gas. We're going to cut that even more.
Right.
Natural gas and coal-fired plants generated nearly 60% of the nation's energy last year. Wow. Compared with about 20% from renewables such as wind, solar, and hydropower. But that actually isn't the equation you're looking for. The equation you're looking for is when you have cold weather, when you have no wind, when it's night. Where's your consistent forms of energy? Because, yeah, you can sit there at times, and we know that wind power alone can provide, when the wind is blowing, up to 60%. I believe it's around 60% of the power here in the state of Texas.
Right.
When it's blowing. When it's not blowing, something's got to back that up.
It's just insane that even those that are charged with providing the energy that know the full equation here are slow walking this and going, listen, we can also do solar and wind, but we're going to need natural gas. And no. Why are we being stupid about this? Why are we being stupid about this? What we're doing is we're building this acceptance over and over again of, well, we may have brownouts today. Make sure you don't use your AC during the afternoon. Phoenix, West Texas. We should never, ever, ever be in a situation where that is a regular occurrence. That should be an anomaly that gets everybody's attention because something is wrong in the infrastructure, but not because we chose to build an infrastructure that can't do the job.
And we know, hey, you guys, what's the example? Right here in Republican Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Republicans were proud to take wind power awards for being the number one wind power state.
Yay!
Yay!
We're good people. We care more about the planet than any other state. Yay!
And then Frizola hit in February of 21.
Uh-oh.
Where solar was useless and wind was shut down completely.
Yeah.
And as we have stated, since the word went out, hey, coal plants, natural gas plants, we're going to be shutting you down. You're going out of business. Nobody's going to do long-term capital investment there, so they weren't ready for the freeze. Hey, just like to fund the police, Saw the woman in Portland yesterday who was mugged. Well, this is what we asked for. What could you expect? Same thing from the police union chief in San Francisco. Well, we've got crime is out of control. Well, what did you expect? We defunded the police. What did you expect? There was no other conclusion. There's no other conclusion as to the disaster that's waiting for us.
Yep.
And it's like, let's keep voting those people in because they sound nice. They sound as if they care.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we talk about the ignorance of the American public where the majority don't understand the Constitution of the United States, can't even tell you the three branches of government. If they can't do that, then they cannot tell you about the separation of powers. They don't even understand how our system works, yet they criticize it every day, and they can't even tell you how it works. They criticize by ignorance. How many people know how a grid works? How many people know about electricity? You and I were talking about, vehicles, and I remember thinking about this a long time ago. I mean, when I was young, my father bought, it was called the Visible engine. It was a V8 engine, and we put it together. I mean, it was a whole thing, and, plastic engine. Remember that? You could see that. So I knew exactly how an internal combustion engine works. I mean, precisely. I know how it works. And I learned, I learned at a very young age, 8, 9 years old. How many people today drive a car and have any idea how it works underneath them? How an internal combustion car works.
Right.
If the majority of Americans don't know the three branches of government, how many people know about, electricity and how it's actually generated? We live in such an ignorant nation. Doesn't mean stupid. It means lack of knowledge. And people make decisions every day being ignorant on what they're voting on. They have no clue as to the people that they're putting in office, what these people will actually do. And for the most part, because this is the worst part of it, it's willful ignorance. They don't care. It sounds good. And so that's what I'm going to vote for. I'm not going to research it. I'm not even going to pay attention to my own, my own self-interest here. I'm lazy. It sounds good. I want it.
Until my power's gone.
Till my power's gone.
And then it's too late.
And then you SOB, why didn't you look out after my best interest? Well, because you didn't. And if you're not going to look out for your best interest, you're a fool if you believe some politician is.
And once the change is already in place, once all of this is done and behind us, and much of it is, it takes a much greater political will to turn it back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So these energy providers saying, we don't need to, no, we need to all quit being stupid, and we need to have reliable energy. And we're the king when it comes to our reserves of oil and natural gas. And I mean of the world. We tower over everyone. But we choose not to do it.
It's a choice.
Yep.
We could have much cheaper electricity prices.
Oh, yeah.
And believe me, it's going to go up.
Cheap and plentiful energy and a massive expansion of the economy.
Right.
Which would be...
Across all sectors,
it would be, yep, and it would be for at least a couple of lifetimes.
Well, we talk about the manufacturing base all the time. What would help boost and give America a competitive advantage in manufacturing? I mean, if we can find any workers that want to work in manufacturing.
Cheap energy.
Anymore. Cheap energy. Across the board. You want to boost the economy with the cheap energy we have, that's how you do it. You want to remain a superpower economic-wise in the world, cheap energy. Cheap energy. Do we have it, or does that cheap energy have to come from overseas? Nope. Can all be produced here in the United States. We refuse to do it.
We choose not to do it. Let's not forget the current president has begged other nations, Venezuela and the Saudis, for oil. If you're one of these liberal-minded people that says no, wind and solar is the future, and we have to do that, then why is he begging other countries? Why do we have to get on a knee and beg anyone? We don't.
No. We choose to beg.
Yep.
We choose to beg totalitarian dictatorships.
Yes. Choosers can be beggars.
Yeah, all right, we got to write that down.
We just proved
Choosers can be beggars. All right, I like that.
And
choosers can be beggars.
And this is where we are as a nation.
Gosh.
We have it. It's right here in the ground. It's right here. A massive expansion of the economy that would go on for lifetimes. And the world, and by the way, if you're one of these that says, oh, we just went to this country or that country for oil. Okay, fine. You get your answer too. You get your solution. Because when we truly prove to the world that we're willing to go get it and we are the king, then the former leader of Iran, Ahmadinejad, when he stepped out and said, we want to, we want to wipe Israel off the map, or they're screaming death to America, or the oil markets don't shake as much. You don't shake the foundation geopolitically. And everything that we need right here is available to us. We rely on no one, but we choose not to do it.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley. I'm Gary McNamara. I'm exhausted today. I mean, not physically, just mentally from these topics.
No, it's draining because these are the most critical things, if you think about it. The basis of who we are as a nation, a free society, and to keep free markets alive requires that expansion of wealth. While the left today wants to, of course, do away with that. You shouldn't have wealth. They say there shouldn't be billionaires. That's what they're saying. But what they really mean by that is because, okay, let's say we do away with billionaires.
You take wealth out of the private sector.
Well, then, yeah. But then after the billionaires, well, now it's the millionaires. Now that's going to scare Bernie because he's now a millionaire. But these are the things that they look at, and it's like, well, no, the millionaires are dangerous. Well, you have wealth that your neighbor doesn't have. We should all be equal and the same. Yeah, we're a free society. Free markets reign, and we need the expansion of wealth.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Harley. All right, we got polling numbers here.
All right, what do you got?
This is from Tip Insights. As the Biden corruption probe broadens and more evidence comes to the foreground on possible bribery of the Biden family by foreign powers, a question arises: what do Americans think should be done if the allegations are true?
Okay.
The overwhelming response: Biden should leave or be removed from office and not run again, the latest INI Tip poll shows.
Okay.
In an earlier story, we wondered if any of these charges are shown to be true, can Biden weather the ensuing political storm, or will he face a choice of impeachment or resignation, and thereby force the Democrats to find a new standard bearer in 2024. In the online poll of 1,341 adults, taken July 5th through the 7th. Now, that's quite a long time ago.
It is. It's a month ago, roughly.
Yep. Because there's been a lot of new news since that point. With a margin of error of 2.7 percentage points, we answered that question. Biden is not likely to weather the political storm. A strong majority, 63%, suggested that President Joe Biden should either be impeached or resign if the charges prove true. 20% said Biden, if the charges are true, if they believe the charges are true, believe that Biden should stay in office and run again if he wishes.
Well, one of our listeners filled in a possibility because otherwise it's Kamala. 20% are saying, no. Bribery is just fine. It's fine.
Bribery is better than Kamala.
And remember, this is proving bribery.
Well, then it must be, as what was it, NPR suggested, race and gender. It must be the bigotry. Well, it's not the. Well, I guess. Well, what would it be? Because race, gender, bribery.
Yeah.
NPR was asking that question the other day. We brought it up where they said, "Is the reason that she's not popular, you're not popular, is because of your gender and your skin color?" So they believe that the Democratic Party is racist and sexist because that's where her great unpopularity is.
Right.
Naturally, her unpopularity, it would be a given, would be in the opposition party.
Right.
The big concern is that she polls so low with Democrats.
Right.
That's the difference.
Right.
So NPR is questioning again, and we've heard this many times before, and when Kamala Harris was first to pull out in the 2020 race, she said it was because of her race and gender, and we went, but they're all Democrats.
Yep. It was a primary.
Yeah. And nobody ever complained saying she shouldn't say that. We're Democrats. We're not racist or sexist.
Right.
Is that because they know they are? Why did nobody complain?
Right.
I didn't hear one complaint.
I didn't.
Not one.
Nope.
And we searched when that happened because we immediately picked up on that and go, see if anybody complains about her saying that.
Right.
It's like, nope. So 63% say Biden should either be impeached or resign. 20% stay in office and run again if he wishes, because the other choice is Kamala. All right, I added that one. 17%. I don't know.
Well, what if they gave a choice? Pick one. You could let him stay in office, or allow Kamala, or just phrase it that way, or allow Kamala Harris to become president.
All right, here's one. 85% of Republicans think Biden should be impeached or quit if the charges are proved true.
What's with the 15%?
I know. With the 15.
I
Is
mean,
it- I
okay,
don't
hold
know,
on
or-
a second. There's Liz Cheney. I don't know who else would be on that list in that 15. Or is it just the same with the 15%? Are they saying, no, don't remove him because it'll mean Kamala Harris?
Well, this is interesting because independents, 64% believe if the charges are true, Biden should be removed from office.
Again, if you can prove the charges.
This is if you prove the charges.
Not just from what we know now, but if you can prove the charges, how is it not 100%?
15% say, independents say he should be able to run again. 21% say, I don't know. Now, for Democrats, a plurality of Democrats, 45% say he should either be impeached or removed from office. You have, let me just see here, 35% of Democrats say stay in office and run again.
If you can prove bribery.
35% wish him to stay, yes.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
So
We're so beyond scorched earth. We really are. We really are. We are so doomed.
I remember this is a month ago too.
Right.
So this is a month ago before everything that has happened. So as we said, it's not. But
it
not
is
good.
conditional if you can prove bribery. I mean, that's the ultimate allegation. Is that he's compromised, that he got money in exchange for doing something.
Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting reading this because, this came out July 31st, this poll, but it's from the beginning of the month. And it says, as George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley recently noted, starting with his campaign for the presidency and continuing until recently, President Biden has maintained one clear and consistent position on his son's influence peddling schemes. As a virtual mantra, Biden and the White House staff have categorically maintained that he had no knowledge of any foreign dealings with his son. That was just a month ago. We know now that is no longer, they've moved up the goalposts on that one.
Right.
Yet Hunter Biden admitted in court during his failed plea deal last week that he received over $500,000 from a company that was linked to the Chinese Communist Party, appeared to contradict his father's earlier claim that no one in the Biden family made any money from China. So both of those things were hit. My son has not made money in terms of this thing's about. What are you talking about, China? Joe Biden, speaking to President Trump, said during the 2020 debate, the only guy who made money from China is this guy, Trump. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China. So,
all right.
You've seen those two moves. And by the way, it got worse yesterday after Devon Archer did an interview with Tucker Carlson. Let me just play part of it here.
All right.
I want to play parts of it here. Here we go.
So you worked with Hunter Biden in a bunch of different businesses. What were the specific skills that he brought to clients?
Well, at the end of the day, he had a career in Washington,
Yeah.
graduated Yale Law School, and had a very big network in D.C., and brought that know-how and understanding of D.C. and ultimately the Biden brand.
The thing was, I didn't like the way that this, people can differ. Tucker Carlson was too chummy with him. Laughing all the time and everything else. Ask the questions. When you say the Biden brand, what specifically does that mean? When you say Biden brand, what does that mean?
Brand?
Specifically.
In business,
he didn't ask the question that way.
Do you mean? Because the only Biden brand is public service.
Yes.
That's it. There is no Biden brand. There's a whole list of Trump brands outside of public service. There is no Biden brand. So do you mean by that access to his father? Is that what you're saying?
It was interesting, and I forgot who brought it up yesterday. They said that after, the interview came out, that Goldman was out there saying the investigation needs to stop now.
Yeah.
Because he can't even use the Devon. Because Devon Archer did, again, he said things like, let's play this audio cut here.
Okay.
Here we go. All right.
You're taking a call from the vice president, and you put it on speaker. It's not just, hey, Dad, I'm in a meeting with some buddies.
Right.
It's, let me put my dad, the vice president, on speaker.
Yeah. Yep. In the rear view, it's an abuse of soft power, I'd say.
He never questioned, what does that mean, abuse of soft power? That would have been the first thing. What do you mean by abuse of soft power? So, and then he talks about, this is the thing that was, I think, really shut up Goldman, because, Goldman was saying, well, he wasn't involved in the business at all. And here's where Devon Archer talks about a lovely letter that he received from Joe Biden, thanking him for all the work that he's doing. Yeah. And so that blows it right there, because Devon Archer is one of his business.
Right.
He didn't talk to any people about business. He talked to Devon Archer about it.
Right.
Here we go.
What's he thanking you for?
Well, first of all, it's a lovely letter, and it was.
It's quite enthusiastic. It's a little weird, though, right?
Yeah. Well, it was kind of the beginning of our partnership, and he was thanking me and thanking Hunter, I think, at the end of the day, for bringing this idea of this government regulatory strategic advisory business into the private equity world, and I think he was excited about the prospects for Hunter, and he was just thanking me. I think it was a nice gesture.
Which means he's thanking him, which means he knows what they're doing in business. Otherwise, he wouldn't be thanking them.
Right.
He knows it, so he's involved in the business.
Right.
And that's when that was when I really think that got Goldman to say, "When they need to shut down this investigation now, there's nothing there."
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, no, there's a whole lot more there.
So even though I thought Tuffer should have been tougher on the specifics, and stopped him and not been such a friendly laugh, because there were so many laughs during it. Look, we can laugh about the idiocy of it, but when you've got one of the major witnesses there, you break down everything, and Tucker didn't do that.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I want.
He got enough.
I'm
not saying he didn't get anything, because he did.
Mm-hmm.
He shut up Goldman, because everything that he led to, that Devon Archer led to, was the fact that this was all about Joe Biden.
Right.
Once he said, he goes, well, the group of people, that would consult him, his brothers, family members, and his father, and so he did it in a way, but I just thought my goal would have been to really pin him down. What does the brand mean?
Exactly.
What is the brand specifically when you say that? And he didn't ask the question that way, and so I would have been tougher on him. I wouldn't have made it such a jolly, interview.
Well, it's important to get to the truth.
Yeah. But you did advance. I'll give him credit for that. He did advance the fact that, okay, it's about Joe, and shut Goldman up for the day. Where Goldman, and I say shut Goldman because when Goldman's saying, stop the, this, we need to stop the investigation because there's nothing there, that's what you want.
Yeah, right.
Because he doesn't know where to go at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's, what was the other thing that I was, I know, there's so many things going on. I mean, there's this and the entire, a Trump thing, too. That something that we said yesterday that Andrew McCarthy actually backed up, and we'll get to here in a couple of minutes. But it's where, and I guess I said it, I said, something, if you talk about committing fraud against the United States government, Hillary did it with the whole Russia collusion. Yeah. By the Democrats there, by Jack Smith's definition of how he's charging Trump, Hillary was way more guilty. Because you know why? You can connect the dots to actual, not just things said, but behavior in an enterprise or a conspiracy.
Yeah, right.
You want that conspiracy to defraud government, you've got it, boom, ba-boom, 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 actual actions to do it, to finance and create lies, sell it to the FBI, sell it to the media. But we said what he is doing by his prosecution is a fraud against the government. If you're talking about by Jack Smith's own standard, he is breaking his own law with these bogus charges against Trump that are based on freedom of speech.
Right.
Political freedom of speech.
Right. By his own standard.
By his own standard. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. Due to safety concerns, many motor carriers have policies that limit or prohibit the use of cruise control. If your motor carrier does allow you to use cruise control, you should only use it in good driving conditions during daylight hours and on roads that have light traffic, few curves or hills, and a consistent speed limit. Never use cruise control when operating in adverse driving conditions, including wet, icy, or slippery roads, during rush hour in heavy traffic or on congested highways, at night, or when you're tired or fatigued. During all of these driving scenarios, you want to be controlling and adjusting your speed as you drive instead of having to suddenly brake if you encounter an obstacle. In the case of a slippery road surface, you want to be able to slow your vehicle by not accelerating instead of using the brakes whenever possible. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Friday Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So our entire point is by the Democrat standard, which is the Jack Smith standard of the crimes that Donald Trump committed in January 6th that aren't there. We said yesterday, when you think about it, by his own standard, he is committing the same kind of fraud against the government that he's accusing Trump of doing, because there are no charges there. Andrew McCarthy sort of covers this where he says January 6th indictment, a political scheme to influence the next election, and goes on to say, let me just get to the right part here. Smith does not have such crimes. He has an abundance of deceptive speech and expression by Trump that is constitutionally protected. In fact, it is political speech in connection with the electoral process at the very core of First Amendment protection. He doesn't have penal offenses, so he fakes it. Oh, fraud. Trump is charged with defrauding the United States, even though it was just a few weeks ago in throwing out convictions of two cronies of former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo that the Supreme Court reaffirmed that in federal law, fraud means a swindle to bilk victims out of money or tangible property. It is not a vehicle by which prosecutors may impose their vision of good government. Trump is charged with obstructing Congress, even though corruption for these purposes must comprise clearly unlawful acts such as evidence manipulation or witness intimidation, not speech that is constitutionally protective, even if deceptive. And finally, and absurdly, charged with a civil rights violation, a scheme to have votes discounted based on a Civil War statute designed to address the Ku Klux Klan's violent, forcible attacks and intimidation on black voters. Because that's the whole point, of course, the political objective of this political scheme, which the Biden Justice Department has masqueraded, again, a fraud, as a legal proceeding, is to rush the case to trial and inundate voters with Capitol riot imagery in the 2024 campaign stretch run.
Right.
Okay, so by his own standard, he is committing fraud against the government.
Listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I think what is fascinating, Eric, is in so many of the cases, really since 2020, since we look at the Hunter Biden laptop, and even when you go back and look at Russia collusion and all that, and the impeachments, two of the biggest supporters of the law, of looking at the law and saying what's going on with Trump is bogus, and what the Democrats are doing and what Biden is doing is bogus, are probably two of the most well-known liberal constitutional law professors over the last 50 years. If you take Dershowitz and then you look at Jonathan Turley, both are Democrats. On Greta Van Susteren yesterday, Dershowitz said, I want to be able to vote against Trump. I mean, that's his ultimate argument.
Right.
I want to be able to vote against Trump. They're trying to get him out. I want to vote against Trump.
Right.
So you can take that into consideration. As Turley said, he's a Democrat. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that Alan Dershowitz is one of the most liberal law professors in history. Traditional liberal, not the insane liberals that you see, some of the law professors out there. I can't think of the one I'm thinking of right now. In my mind, it just went through my. I can't think of it. I can't think of it. But he, I wouldn't forget Dershowitz's name because that's how well known he is. But Dershowitz was talking about a couple of things with Greta Van Susteren yesterday. I almost said on Fox News. Where is she? News Nation? Newsmax? Yeah, Newsmax, I think. And talking about the whole thing of the special counsel, where, when Ken Starr was an independent counsel. He was approved by 3 judges, appeal court judges. It wasn't the Department of Justice that did it. And she asked him the question about, are we doing this all wrong? Because you and I talked about this. You cannot trust the special counsels that are appointed by the Department of Justice. You can't. This Department of Justice, it's too tainted. And she asked him about the special counsel, and he said, well, it should be independent, and it should be picked by judges if it's going to be picked up at all. But Dershowitz talks about what he thinks the solution should be. The ultimate answer is that you have 2 departments, one political justice department that advises the president, a member of the cabinet. So that's just to advise the president. All right? Most countries have that. And then a director of public prosecution, which is not a public appointment job. It's a civil service job, not answerable to the president. That you have a separate director of public prosecution. Sort of, I guess, like inspector generals.
Okay.
If you have that division, you don't need special counsel or independent counsel. The reason we need independent counsel is because we have a schizophrenic Justice Department that half the day is supposed to be the president's political advisors to help them get reelected, and the other half of the day they're supposed to be independent and only indict people based on their merits. But when we combine those 2 roles, which is why we need a special counsel, but it's much better to have whatever that person is called appointed by 3 judges, not appointed by the person who was appointed by the president, especially in cases where somebody is running against the incumbent president. That standard has to be so high for that, and it does not look like it's been met by this indictment. It certainly wasn't met by the indictment in New York, and questionable whether it was met by the indictment in Florida, and it will be met by the indictment in Fulton County. And he says, of course, he has to promote, in my book on Trump. I went through all these indictments and showed how politicized our system of justice has become, and today's indictment seems to demonstrate that. And then she started talking about the classified documents, about that whole case, and talked about, Biden having them in multiple places and Pence, having them, and asked, is Trump being treated fairly? Now, remember, you probably cannot find somebody who despises on the left Donald Trump more than Dershowitz.
Right.
But Dershowitz is talking about what the law is. Dershowitz, no, he wasn't treated fairly. Now we have to see whether the obstruction charge sticks. It's based apparently on triple hearsay. I've read the indictment. It doesn't say in the indictment that Donald Trump himself told an eye or ear witness to erase videotapes. Apparently, there were no erased videotapes. All the videotapes were turned over, so the obstruction charge seems to be based on triple hearsay, but we'll wait and see how that is uncovered and develops. The charge itself of classified material does not meet that standard of the same justice for all because it doesn't seem all that different from the allegations made against other people of the Democratic Party. So far, I've seen nothing that warrants prosecuting the man who is now in a 44-44 poll tie with an incumbent president and trying to influence the outcome of that election through prosecution. To do that, the standard has to be so high, like in the Nixon case, I don't think it has been met here. And then she said, let me ask you about the New York State case, the Bragg case. And he said, no, it's the worst indictment I've seen in 60 years of practice. Never in the history of America, probably never in the history of the world has somebody been indicted for paying hush money, the purpose of which is to keep people quiet, and they're not publicly not acknowledging the payment of hush money on a corporate form. It's unheard of. It's never been done. It's a made-up crime. It's the worst of the four indictment. It's the worst. It's the strongest indictment. The strongest indictment is the obstruction indictment in Florida if there's evidence to support it, and it looks like maybe there isn't evidence to support it. But the self-inflicted wound of waiving a classified document saying I could have declassified when I was a president, but I didn't. But again, that is not a serious enough crime to warrant interfering with an election. Wow. Then she goes into Hillary because it's important because with comparison. She goes, and Van Suster says, I mean, I think they're all hoarders. I mean, every single one of these people hoards, and I know every single one of them have been charged with classified documents. But you take Secretary of State Clinton, who you know, I do not think she was ever going to do anything with the documents. I just don't believe it. I don't. But they ended up on Anthony Weiner's computers, he's got all these sort of sex crimes. He pledged to it, and he's the husband of her chief of staff or something. I mean, it was so sloppy. What are classified documents doing on her chief of staff's husband computer, who's got questionable problems? He got convicted. I think it's all sloppy. It's terrible. But, I mean, you know, they ought to be all treated the same. Dershowitz, it was worse than a crime. It was dumb, and it may have cost her the election because Comey basically said what you have said, and although it's not a crime, it was serious. And she said, let's talk about Comey for a second. He's a director of the FBI, and he leaks, the whole leaking thing.
Yeah.
He said, well, I agree with you. I used to like Comey. He used to come to teach at Harvard, and I used to like him very much. But the idea of laundering secret information through an NYU law professor, I just can't imagine a person of high integrity doing that. The standards of morality and ethics have gone so low in America today for so many people, equally on both sides of the political spectrum. I would disagree with that. And the excuse that they all have, well, they did it first. Two wrongs don't make a right. The victim is Americans who want to have a system of due process in place and equal application of the law. And we are very far apart from that today. So there you go. So it's just interesting to see, you know, that Dershowitz. But again, I want to go back to what we had said yesterday, because by Jack Smith's own standards, he's indicting himself for defrauding the federal government.
Sure.
By his own standards
of
what he is doing.
He would have a number of people lined up, but he would have to be number one.
Because he's interfering in an election.
Yes.
He came up with a political scheme to interfere with an election.
Well,
so he is lying about Trump being guilty of crimes when they're protected speech. And by the way, be very clear here, we're making the argument that Jack Smith is making. This isn't our argument.
Based on the standards for his argument. Not only is because he's going after Donald Trump for things he said.
Yep.
Well, Jack Smith is actually taking action here.
We have behavior.
You could go much further with it because his behavior based on his role. If you would talked about Donald Trump issuing a directive or actually being at the Capitol and saying, we all need to storm the Capitol, you have something very different. But if he's, again, by his own standards, the special prosecutor is setting this up based on Trump's words, but the special prosecutor actually goes further in his actions with indictments.
Right. And committing the fraud to interfere in a presidential election.
Right. There was no action by then President Trump on that day, only words.
Right. None. And there's no conspiracy.
Right.
There's no witness tampering.
Jack Smith took action.
Right.
And based on his own standard, went even further because of that.
Since I said it yesterday, I've been trying to find a flaw in my own argument because when I said it, the thought was going through my head for the first time. So I went, I don't see a weak spot in it. Then when I saw Andrew McCarthy today, I'm like, oh, okay. He's much more in tune and has worked in the law for such a long time, is sort of making my same argument. And I went, okay, I still don't see a weak point to it. By his own standard, Jack Smith should be charged. We need a special counsel to investigate the special counsel.
Yeah.
For committing the same heinous criminal act as Donald Trump did.
Right.
Tell me where I'm wrong.
Well, again, if this is going to be the new legal standard, then it has to apply.
Well, the only thing good, by the way the Democrats are going, if this precedent is held up and Republicans continue it, then we'll get to where we all want to be. All the politicians will be in jail.
Yeah.
Because lying will be against the law.
For those screaming, lock them all up. Okay.
We may get there. 866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You see the other thing, the story that came out yesterday, and this is heavy news when it was actually going through Congress. The Biden administration's effort to regulate pistol braces was dealt a blow yesterday after a ruling by a federal appeals court cast doubt on its constitutionality. The Biden administration, I meant Tuesday, the Biden administration rule requiring gun owners to register pistol braces, which are accessories that can be attached to the rear of the gun to make it easier to aim and fire with one hand. The Second Amendment proponents argued that braces make handguns safer and more accurate, but gun control advocates argued the braces could be used to lengthen a concealable handgun, making it more dangerous. A regulation that went into effect June 1st was one of several steps President Joe Biden first announced in 2021. Two Texas gun owners, a gun rights group, and a gun dealer filed a lawsuit challenging the law. A Texas-based federal judge presiding in the case refused to block the rule, which required registration of the devices and payment of a fee. But in May, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a temporary block of the rule as it applied to the plaintiffs, their customers, and members. Then the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans said Tuesday the Biden administration's rule requiring registration for braces was unlikely to survive a legal challenge. There is a need for constant application of the law, and this court may not have all the required facts, Judge Jerry Smith wrote, noting that multiple other courts have issued orders against the federal registration rule since May, and that it is uncertain how many people are now covered by such rulings. The panel voted 2-1 to extend the block on enforcement for 60 days and send the case back to the U.S. District Judge in Texas.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.